Welcome back. Throughout the day here on KSL, we are going to be talking about a resource here in Utah to help protect your kids, to keep them safe, give them an avenue where they can reach out for help if they need it. It is called the Safe Utah app. From your smartphone, you can instantly chat or call a licensed crisis counselor, and you can talk about issues ranging from bullying to suicide, or if you feel like there is something that you're feeling threatened, you can reach out and send a tip to your school. The resource is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Now, throughout the day today, the KSL morning team and throughout the day on KSL.
We'll be talking about this app all day long.
It's so easy. I got to put in my password. It is so easy to use. There it is.
What I like about the app is that you can be in contact with someone 24/7.
Well, Lori, this is the app right here, Safe Utah. It puts that phrase, see something, say something, into action.
These days, kids are always on the go. They communicate with technology. That's why the Safe Utah app was designed with them in mind. With just the tap of a screen,
do you have somebody that could go up there with you?
The Safe Utah app connects you with a real person.
They're all licensed mental health workers, so they're all master's level clinicians, and we're staffed 24/7. So we make sure that no text goes unanswered.
This is a look behind the scenes of the 24/7 Crisis Line Center at the Utah Neuropsychiatric Institute on the campus of the University of Utah. These are the people
Okay, I can get you over to...
on the other side of the app.
We try to respond within 2 minutes or less.
The app allows a person to text, call, or submit a tip, and it's anonymous. Since the app launched in 2016, 19,000 Utah students have used it.
A lot of them are just reaching out for somebody to talk to, somebody to listen to them.
And the crisis clinicians aren't the only ones ready to respond.
What's up? How you doing? Doing good.
Tips also go right to the schools.
Because it is 24/7, there have been a multitude of times where, as the principal, I'm taking phone calls on a Sunday evening, a Saturday night, all hours of the day, and getting, reports.
86 times a school threat has been foiled thanks to a tip sent in on the Safe Utah app. Principal Brian McGill says the app gives students a safe space to voice a concern, knowing someone will always respond.
And when we have reports of concern that happen to involve my students, I take the initiative as the principal to actually reach out and contact parents when we have cause for concern.
Tonight, keeping our kids safe is top of mind for Utah leaders. Since that deadly Florida school shooting, there have been a string of school threats right here in Utah.
Just this week, there have been 4 separate investigations of threats at different schools. Police confirm investigations at Bucks Elder Middle School, Eastmont Middle School, Wasatch High School, and today, Springville High School. These investigators have led to at least 2 students arrested, another cited.
And those threats are just a few of the dozens that law enforcement have seen in the past couple of years. Since 2016, there have been 86 planned attacks on Utah schools that have been stopped. News specialist Nicole Val explains just how serious law enforcement is taking this. Nicole?
Yeah, it's a really important message. All levels of law enforcement really warning Utah students that no threats of violence of any form will be taken lightly. In 4 days, 4 different Utah schools investigate threats, all based on verbal comments or posts to social media. All 4 threats deemed baseless, but law enforcement says joking or not, threats are serious.
These aren't jokes.
News specialist Jed Bull shares success stories that highlight why it's so important for us to download this critical tool right now.
We think this app should be on the phone of every student, parent, and teacher in this state. Students can call the crisis line 24/7. They can chat with a counselor if they're struggling with thoughts of hurting themselves or others. And if they see something suspicious, they can report it anonymously to school leaders around the clock.
I received a couple of Safe Utah tips.
4 weeks ago,
they had the exact verbiage.
Margaret Dow's phone lit up all night long.
That had been posted on the social media.
How are you guys doing?
The Jordan High School principal and critical district personnel were getting Safe Utah alerts.
Saying, hey, I just read on Snapchat that this is going to happen. Are we going to be okay?
A student spotted a threat online.
There was a student that was going to come and shoot up and or bomb the school on Friday during our assembly.
Students and parents used the Safe Utah app to raise a red flag.
I think they did it because they had no idea how else to contact me. Like, it's 10:30 at night. I mean, these tips were coming in all through the night.
As rumors of the attack spread, kids were nervous about going to school. Using the Safe Utah app in the middle of the night, Dow alerted the school community that the threats were unfounded.
So I just literally in those responses said, this is the principal, this is Mrs. Dow. I am very aware of this situation. We are taking care of everything. I have the police involved. We will make sure that every student is safe when you come to school tomorrow.
You know, the notion of it can't happen here is no longer a notion.
How can anyone learn in an environment where they are afraid?
No more silence!
End gun violence!
These are our lives at stake.
Those threats have doubled since Parkland. We're seeing so much anxiety about coming to school.
We all know that in order for learning to occur, we have to have safe schools.
Where are the possible solutions?
With the program we have in place, something like that is virtually impossible.
There's no way to get into these doors.
There is no one-size-fits-all.
It's not cheap.
Our app is really unique.
Yeah, if anybody can fix this issue, I would trust the people of Utah to do that.
Good evening. We're going to have your headlines and weather coming up shortly. But first tonight, we want to go in depth on a topic that is urgent, important, and affects nearly every family in Utah. In fact, so urgent that right now the Canyon School District is investigating a possible threat against Indian Hills Middle School, and they need your help in their effort to keep kids safe. Here's what we know at this hour. Messages on Instagram were sent from a now deleted account, IHMS 2017, according to the district. The messages were sent with content that could be seen as a threat.
Schools in Virginia are working to get in front of those kinds of warning signs.
Specially trained threat assessment teams are active in every school, monitoring the mental wellness of kids who are in crisis. We sent John Hollenhorst to the East Coast to see exactly how it works.
In the aftermath of the Parkland massacre, one thing about shooter Nicholas Cruz stands out loud and clear. His brooding anger, disturbing behavior, and violent threats raised red flags all over the place.
We all knew as soon as it happened, as soon as we found out what was happening, that it was this kid.
That is, when a student makes a threat, that's really a red flag that they're frustrated, upset, something has gone wrong.
Professor Dewey Cornell of the University of Virginia has been studying school violence for 2 decades. He believes the standard campus approach to threatening behavior, zero tolerance and expulsion or suspension, is counterproductive.
We've seen in a number of school shootings that kids were alienated, angry, upset, and then excluded from school, which only gave them more time to become resentful and plan and prepare an assault.
Instead, Virginia lawmakers in Richmond adopted a decidedly different approach. Every school, K-12 and college, is required to have threat assessment teams standing by.
It can help resolve the underlying concern.
When a concern or threat is reported, the team evaluates the student's trouble and decides what, if anything, needs to be done.
We sometimes identify people that have legitimate grievances. They are being bullied, they are being harassed.
The team gathers as much information from as many sources as possible,
so that all that information synthesizes and they can find the best and most appropriate intervention in the child's life.
Only rarely does it require calling in the cops. Each team has the expertise to refer the student to counseling or mental health services or to grapple with personal issues that are provoking tension.
Once the children understand and feel as though they're supported and they have a pathway, I've never seen it not work.
Virginia was the first state to make threat assessment mandatory in all schools. Now it's catching on in other states, and legislation is working its way through Congress that would help pay for it. Ryan Petty lost his daughter, Elena, in the Parkland shooting. He and his son, Patrick, are now lobbying lawmakers to act on the human side of the equation instead of endlessly arguing over gun control. And they've already made progress at home in Florida.
I'm happy to say in 3 weeks we passed a school safety bill.
Now they hope to spark federal change in memory of Elena, with the help of Senators Orrin Hatch and Marco Rubio.
And I think we would all agree that the best way to stop these is to stop it before a killer ever steps foot in a school or in a mall or in a stadium or anywhere.
I wish that we had had the Stop Violence Act a month ago, so that something like Parkland will never happen again, and no other student, no other person has to bury their sister or family member or loved one.
John Hollenhorst, KSL-5 News, Washington.
John, thank you. So what's next? The Stop School Violence Act provides funding states can use to implement threat assessment teams in those schools. The bill passed the House last week. It is being debated in the Senate tonight as we speak, and it is expected to pass. Deanie?
Well, just this week, another school became a crime scene when a student opened fire on classmates in Maryland.
An armed security guard was able to intervene, shoot and kill the gunman within seconds. In Washington, D.C., there are calls for arming teachers. One state that's on the forefront of that debate is Texas, where roughly 14% of school districts have had armed teachers in classrooms for years now. We sent news specialist Lori Pritchard to the Lone Star State to see how it's working for them.
In this northern part of rural Texas, the land is flat, the sky is big, and the wind is fierce. In between the water tower and the railroad, you'll find Harold, population 175. The closest sheriff is 30 minutes away. Because of that, the Harold School District voted to arm its teachers. That was a decade ago.
It's hard to put a number on the good things guns do for us.
Harold Superintendent David Thweet is unapologetically blunt about guns.
I believe this is the result of failed policy. I believe our mass shootings are the result of failed policy of making schools gun-free zones.
Not far from Harold is Holiday. It's 10 times bigger, big enough to have its own police department, but armed teachers and staff walk these hallways too.
If I had my choice, we would have an armed police officer or even have our own police force.
Arming teachers for Holiday and Harold comes down to cost. It's too expensive to hire an officer, so some employees carry. And under Texas law, only a few know who do.
The police department is aware of who carries.
As is the school board and the superintendent. Not students.
We just talk about trying to guess which teacher might have it and all.
Because you don't know.
Yeah, we don't get told who it is, but we guess at it.
The key is the anonymity. So not only do you not know where the threat of resistance is going to come from if you come in to shoot our kids, but you don't know from whom.
There's a strict process Texas schools must follow by law. Armed teachers must be approved by the school board, get extra training, psychological testing.
We're looking for people who have a firm grip on reality.
But in an active shooter situation, reality can quickly turn to chaos. Holiday's police chief told us he was concerned at first. Together, they worked out a clear plan. Teachers immediately disarm when law enforcement arrive.
We're out and they're in.
There are other things teachers do so police know they're not the bad guys. Those aren't made public. Still, Dr. Kevin Dye's worries there could be confusion.
When you're in a small town, now that's not a 100% safeguard because there'll be more than just our local police department responding.
For Harold, the county sheriff is a town away.
They're having to come in blind. We're not.
Thweet's people are the first line of defense and may be an even better shot.
This is the argument for my plan. My people know the layout of the building. They know who the good guys are, the bad guys are, and they are trained in accuracy and shot placement.
172 school districts of the 1,200 in Texas arm teachers. The vast majority are rural.
You know, honestly, I don't think a whole lot about it.
Here, parents seem okay with that.
And I don't ever worry that my kid's not going to come home from school.
It gives my kids and other kids a chance. The chance is there to live.
There hasn't been a school shooting in Texas since teachers were cleared to carry weapons. But Dr. Dyes warns guns are only a tool, not a deterrent.
We need to do some things to ensure the safety of our students and our staff. No, it's not an end-all be-all. It's not a magic bullet.
Not everyone is happy about arming teachers in the state of Texas. I spoke with the Texas Association of Teachers. They represent 600,000 teachers. Their spokesperson told me you don't reduce gun violence in schools by adding more guns.
From high tech to low tech, we went in search of what's being done and what's working in our schools. Once students are in place for their school day, Pony Express Elementary is secured. Exterior doors lock.
Hi, how can I help you?
Hi, just here to check out my child.
And a video camera system allows the school secretary to see who they're talking to.
Okay, watch for the green light and come on in.
Before buzzing the door.
And then they come straight into the office with an ID ready.
In the Alpine School District, work is underway to build similar systems and beef up security in 36 elementary schools this year.
The more that the school can do to help them feel safe and to help them feel like they are in a secure environment while they're here, the better.
Secondary schools in Alpine are also being outfitted with camera systems, and school resource officer programs are expanding.
Yeah, Dave, we were there for the very first meeting of the Utah School Safety Commission. And this is what is the opposite, you might call it, to a knee-jerk reaction to a school shooting. This group plans on months of private debate so that only the best ideas move forward.
If anybody can fix this issue, I would trust the people of Utah to do that. We are more kind and considerate. We are more service-oriented than most of the people in the country.
Representative Mike Kennedy's betting this brand new commission will show the nation how it's done.
My passion in law enforcement.
KSL had the only camera there as the small group met privately for the first time.
They can actually honestly speak about why things don't work or why they do work.
Looking into how the Safe Utah app is drawing attention from around the country and what you can do to bring it to your school.
Let's take a look here. In the past 3 weeks, the Crisis Line Center at the University Neuropsychiatric Institute has nearly doubled its intake from about 75 tips and chats per day to 130. Okay. Mental health professionals working around the clock is one big reason other states are taking notice of Safe Utah.
They're very interested because our app is really unique in terms of it's really has a preventative function to it. We have the live chat function, and it's the only one like it that we know of.
Idaho, Illinois, and Georgia have reached out about the Safe Utah app.
As Utah searches for solutions to gun violence, special court orders may be a common-sense way to prevent suicides, murders, and mass shootings.
The orders allow law enforcement or family members to petition a judge to take someone's firearms away if they pose an extreme risk. 5 states have passed versions of these gun violence restraining orders, and as many as 30 states are considering or have considered similar laws. We sent KSL's Mark Stevens to San Diego for more.
In the puzzle of potential solutions to mass shootings, the newest piece may be found here in California. San Diego City Attorney Mara Elliott has given gun violence restraining orders top priority.
We don't have to wait for a crime to occur.
Her office has gotten 15 approved in the last 3 months.
If there are enough indicators that there potentially could be a danger if this person continued to possess a gun or have the ability to get custody of a gun, then we can act.
Before it existed, judges could only take away a person's guns if they had been convicted of either a felony or a domestic violence crime. Now, with the restraining order law, police, family members, or housemates can petition a judge to take someone's guns away for a year if they feel the person is a threat to themselves or others. The judge will hold a hearing within 3 weeks to determine if the 1-year restraining order is needed.
And I know these parents are trying hard, but I think they're just really scared.
Tonight we tackle a difficult topic any parent would have trouble addressing: teen suicide. Our hope is to help save lives with one specific piece of advice. Research shows there's about a 10-minute window between when a person thinks about suicide and acts.
As news specialist Lori Pritchard reports, there's something you can do as a parent right now that could help save your child during those desperate moments in a crisis.
Just happy, excited to be here.
Oh my gosh, adventurous, loved the outdoors.
We didn't know that he was at risk at all.
We honestly thought it was just him being a normal teenage boy.
And all of a sudden in one night that changed for him.
Everything.
Sherry Elliott and Catherine Voute share a story.
It's heartbreaking. It's really heartbreaking.
It was a nightmare.
Their sons, Avery Curtamus and Chandler Voute, both died by suicide.
It was, such a shocking thing to find your child, and knowing that you can't do anything.
Both were 15.
In that blink of an eye, it was over.
Both used a firearm.
As we turned the corner and saw all the emergency vehicles, it just hit me and I knew that he was gone.
Our firearm was locked up, but he managed to take the key off the key ring and obtain the firearm and load it, and he took his own life.
That's the leading method. That's the method that accounts for more
suicides than in all the other methods combined.
Harvard researcher Kathy Barber has been studying suicide prevention for nearly 20 years. She's now focused on Utah. Barber's team was tapped by the governor's suicide task force to find out why youth suicide here has tripled in the last decade.
There's so much that's hard with suicide prevention, but this is the real easy thing.
And what lawmakers have learned from Barber's team so far.
One thing I've learned is that parents that will take the steps to secure their firearms will have a great chance of saving their child from death by suicide.
Teenagers are much more likely than little kids to get into the guns.
Utah's youth suicide numbers prove it. In the last 3 years, about half of the 10 to 17-year-olds who died by suicide in Utah died by using a firearm. Barber's team will give a full report to lawmakers in August, but they're already acting on her recommendations.
Keep your guns and ammo locked up safely. Locked up safely.
A PSA is out, now warning Utah parents. State Representative Steve Elison says gun locks, even biometric safes, have been proven to save lives.
We know that 9 out of 10 people who survive an attempt will not go on to die by suicide. But if they use a firearm, very few of them survive. So that's why it's so critical to keep them locked up.
And suicide prevention educators and community activists are also joining in.
If you have a family member who's struggling, please get the gun out of the home.
Neither of these moms thought their child was at risk of suicide. To this day, they don't really know why.
These adolescents need to know, that they're not alone, that they're loved, that they're wanted.
Taking an extra step, just one extra step for either key management or making sure that there's a trigger lock on that gun or some other biometric mechanism to secure that firearm would have given him a little bit of extra time.
We here at KSL are committed to helping you to protect your family. And as Kathy Barber said, there is a lot about suicide prevention that is hard. This is the easy part. Here's the gun lock right here. Tomorrow, we will be fanning out across the state from Ogden to St. George, giving away these gun locks free.
We learn about an essential list of resources parents can offer their students before walking onto campus this year.
Will you get me a plate, please?
Yes.
Mother dearest.
Some days, 14-year-old Jade Godfrey is your typical teenager.
She makes me do my chores. I don't like that. I don't like doing chores.
But unlike some teens, she shares an especially close relationship with her mom, Brianna.
She's great. I can talk to her. Like a lot of people, they're like, I don't tell my parents everything, but like I literally tell my mom everything.
This relationship makes it easy for Brianna to emotionally prepare her daughter for the 9th grade at Fort Harriman Middle School.
My 6th period is drawing.
Their back-to-school plan this year is about more than helping Jade find her locker.
Miss Colvin, yeah?
It includes providing for her kids' emotional and mental health.
You're taking care of yourself.
Brianna and her husband have a family meeting each month with their kids to check in on their well-being.
It's okay to be sad, but if you're sad for too long, let's talk about it.
She downloaded the Safe Utah app with her daughter and taught her how to use it.
So this isn't just for you. This is if you're concerned about anybody at your school as well.
After nearly every school shooting, people look back after the fact and realize there were warning signs that everyone missed or didn't take seriously. The state of Utah is now moving toward a mental health approach designed to catch those red flags and do something about them before the tragedy takes place.
Science and nature specialist John Hollenhorst has the story in our continuing series, In Search of Safe Schools.
In the aftermath of the high school shooting in Parkland, Florida, the Utah legislature set up the Utah Safe Schools Commission. The commission issued its report in June.
I would say the most important recommendation, and we prioritized them, so this was the one on the top, from the Utah Safe Schools Commission was what are called threat assessment teams, or we could call them mental health teams.
Representative Ray Ward is carrying the ball into the next session of the legislature. His bill will require those teams in every school and provide funding for more mental health professionals. It's similar to Virginia's approach. We traveled there in March and found strong support from experts.
Students and teachers report feeling safer and more positive about their schools using a threat assessment approach.
Ward's bill will spell out the makeup of each threat assessment team.
It's a school administrator, and it's a representative of law enforcement, and it's a mental health professional.
Anytime a threat is reported or perceived, the team would meet.
But to understand the level of the threat is the purpose of the team, together with having the tools to respond.
Those tools might include a law enforcement solution, but the team could also decide to help a troubled student with counseling, therapy, or social services. It's not easy measuring the success of a school safety program. After all, how do you count up the number of mass shootings that didn't happen? In Virginia, they're sure it works based on other kinds of data.
What we see is reductions in suspensions, reductions in bullying, reductions in fighting, and students reporting a more positive school climate.
The Davis School District already uses a similar approach. Local teams in each school, supported by 13 mental health professionals at the district level.
Prevention versus reactivity is always best practice.
Davis officials would welcome more money for mental health professionals.
Not just for assessing, aggression threats, depression, suicide. It fills a number of roles there.
Right now, the district's 13 mental health workers are stretched across 90 schools and 74,000 kids. John Hollenhorst, KSL-5 News, Farmington.
KSL has taken the lead in recent months in search of safe schools. We've researched ideas from other states that could help make our Utah schools more safe. And tonight, we're continuing the conversation in every newscast. So we've invited two Utah lawmakers who spent years as educators for their unique perspectives. We're joined by Republican Representative Susan Pulsifer and Democrat Representative Carol Spackman-Moss.
It can happen in Utah. It can happen in this beautiful little valley we live in. Could happen to us.
And while neither threat materialized,
that helped us really make the decision.
Wasatch School District held an emergency meeting and took action anyway.
We have to do more to protect our children. All of the
Superintendent Paul Sweat says changes for this school year include
they will all lock down
a secure front entrance at Wasatch High, meaning not just anyone can walk through the doors. Plus, employees can lock down the school with a flick of their badge.
Any kind of a lockdown emergency with a double click of an employee badge, we can lock this whole school down immediately.
Another change, bullet-resistant film added to the windows of one elementary school.
A bullet will go through it, but it won't shatter and collapse.
It could stop a gunman from shooting out windows. A test for now that may be installed at other schools in the future.
The number one reason they are here is to protect.
One more major addition, a full-time school resource officer at each of the district's 8 schools.
We did not have that before.
Plus 2 officers at Wasatch High.
Anyone coming to harm our children should know that they will be dealing with an armed officer.
But maybe the biggest shift for the district.
It's always been a thing. It's not like it just showed up. But we're starting to pay a lot more attention to it.
An awareness of its students' mental health. And Dr. Ben Springer says that is a huge step forward.
If there's an upside to the tragedies that have been happening nationwide and locally here in Utah, particularly with the suicide rates, it's this awareness.
Springer says Wasatch District has a school counselor in every building, 2 school social workers, and 3 school psychologists. They just hired a new one this year. And while the physical and emotional changes at Wasatch may not prevent tragedy from striking,
we're not naive enough to think that any of it is foolproof, but we do feel like we're doing everything that we can.
That's not stopping the district from trying.
We've got to go help kids now. It's not something that you wait for.
So we sent out a survey to thousands of high school teachers across the state to ask about school safety, and you received an overwhelming response.
Yeah, a survey of this kind on school security is unprecedented in Utah. We had nearly 1,500 teachers respond to our exclusive KSL survey, so safety clearly is a concern.
Teachers we surveyed all agreed their job involves more than educating our teenagers.
Our physical safety is something that we as teachers and the students definitely think about.
We asked specifically high school teachers statewide how they feel about safety. Do they have the training they need? Are schools making changes? Within days, we had 1,433 teachers eager to share their concerns. Teachers like Rachel Bradshaw, who told us she doesn't always feel safe at school or in her class.
Because of things that happen nowadays in schools that didn't used to happen.
Fortunately, she's in the minority. According to our anonymous KSL survey, 90% of teachers, the vast majority, do feel safe at school. But many shared the sentiment in their comments that they also feel a heavy responsibility.
The thought of having 30 students looking to me and me being the one responsible for their safety is extremely overwhelming.